Hello ladies and gents, in this video I'm going to show you how to create a 3D model of a car using Onshape. We're going to try to create something that looks a bit more like a car that you'd see on the road and less like a brick on wheels. And to do that we're going to use the Spline and Extrude remove tools. Before we actually start to create the 3D model, you're going to need to download 3 reference images from the description of this YouTube video: the Porsche top view, the Porsche side view, and the Porsche front view. To do that, create a new project, click on the sketch button and click on the right plane. Then go to the Insert Image button and in the window that appears, click Import. Go to your Downloads folder and find those 3 files you've downloaded. You can see here I've got Porsche front, side and top view. Click on the top one once, hold the Shift key and then click on the last file and then you can highlight them all. Click on Open and they'll upload into your project. To close the notification window, just click on the X icon or hit Delete All and that will get rid of those notifications. With that done, click on Porsche side view and you'll see a message appear at the top of the screen that says Draw Image Rectangle. Click on the right of the view cube and then in the top of the right plane, click once, move the mouse cursor diagonally down until you've got the car at a reasonable size. It doesn't matter if yours isn't exactly the same size as mine, that's completely okay. When you're happy with the size of your car, just click to apply that image and then click on the center of the image and drag it right into the center of the right plane. Try and get it as dead center as you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is just a reference image. When you've done that, let go of the mouse button and then click on the line tool and then click on the construction tool. And we're going to add some construction lines for dimensions. Click on the highest point of the car roof, move the mouse cursor out to the right and then click to apply that construction line. Press the escape key to cancel out of that and then select the tools again, line tool and construction tool. Click on the bottom lowest point of the car, which is the rear tire. Move the mouse cursor out to the side again and then click to create that construction line. Press the escape key to cancel out of that and then click on the dimension tool and click on the 2 dots showing the construction lines that you've just created. Move the mouse cursor outward and you'll get a measurement. I've got 5.80. What I'm going to do is hit Command C to copy that or Control C if you're on a Windows machine and then just press enter. We've copied that number because we're going to use it later. Now select the line tool again, click on the construction tool and at the very front of the car draw another construction line vertically down and then press the escape key to cancel out of that. Click the line tool and construction tool again. Go to the very back of the car and create another vertical construction line and click when you're ready. Press escape to cancel out of that. Click on the dimension tool. Click on the 2 ends of those new construction lines. Move the mouse cursor downward. Click to apply that. We're not copying this measurement, so just press enter. Now give that sketch a name and we'll call it car side view and then click the green check mark. Now click on the front of the view cube and we're going to insert the other guide image. So click the sketch button, click on the front plane, click on insert image and now choose the Porsche front view. Click on the corner of the front plane and do the same thing, create a car that you're happy with and when you've got it a reasonable size, because we'll change this in a minute anyway, just click the mouse button to apply that and drag it dead center into the middle of that front plane and you can use that car badge to try and line it up dead center. Now we're going to again add some construction lines, so hit the line tool and construction tool and at the top of that car roof move the mouse cursor outward and create a construction line, press escape to cancel. Click the line tool, click the construction tool, and at the bottom of the tire, click again, move the mouse cursor outward, and click to apply that construction line. Again, escape to cancel out of that tool when you're done. Now, click the dimension tool, click on the two endpoints of those construction lines, move the mouse cursor outward, and we're going to hit Command V to paste that previous measurement, that height measurement of the side view in. So there you can see I've pasted in 5.80. If your height was different, that's completely fine, but we just want each height of the images to match. So when you've done that, just press the Enter key and it will resize that Porsche for you. Now we can give this a name. We'll call it Car Front View. And when you've done that, click the green check mark. If we use the arrow keys to just rotate the camera slightly, you can see that the car side and front view match each other in height. And that's just what we're looking for. So you can switch to the front view again, and then we're going to insert our last image. So to do that, we're going to just click on the isometric view on the view cube so we can get a view of the top plane. Click on the sketch button and click on the top plane to apply a new sketch. Now click on the insert image button and insert the Porsche top view. Click on the top of the view cube, so we're looking at that top view head on, and click just as usual in the top corner and create something that's a reasonable size. When you've done that, click on the image and drag it into the center of the screen. And again, you can use that Porsche badge on the front of the car to help you line this up. And all we're going to do now is add some more construction lines. So click on the line tool, construction tool. You might want to zoom in, go to the very end of the car, and then move the mouse cursor outward. And if your construction line, like mine, is overlapping with the border of the image, just make sure that you take the construction line out far enough so that it actually is visible. You can reposition the camera, press the escape key to cancel out of that, click on the line and construction tools again, and do the same thing at the front of the car. Move as far out as you need to so that you can see the construction line come out from the border of the image, and then just click to apply that construction line and press escape. Now what we're going to have to do is just give this a name, and we'll come back to it in a minute. So give it a name, we'll call it Car Top View, and click the green check mark. Now we're going to switch to the isometric view. We're going to go into the car side view sketch, so double click it in the feature tree and then click on the right of the view cube, and we're going to take that length of the car measurement. You can double click the measurement so that it opens up and it's editable again, and just hit Command C to copy it, and then close the sketch by clicking the green check mark. Now go back to the top view, double click on the car top view sketch in the feature tree, click on the dimension tool and add some dimensions for those construction lines just like before. Move the mouse cursor outward, click Command V, paste in that measurement we just copied, and then press enter. And you can see that the image changes size. Now click the green check mark to close that sketch. And what we can do is we can switch to an isometric view and zoom in towards the back of the car and just rotate the camera and see how well aligned the two images are. You can see that I'm pretty much spot on there with the back of the top view and side view. But if you're really far off and they're not aligned at all, what you can do is go back into the top view, double click on the car top view in the feature tree and drag a box around the car image so that it's highlighted in orange. Then go to the top menu bar and select Transform. And you can use the transform tools to move the sketch vertically or horizontally. And that blue box that appears is where the image border will move to when you've clicked to apply the transform. So if I want to move the car back towards the top of the screen, I'll move that rectangle up, and then I can click the mouse button to apply that transformation, or you can move it down or to the side with the different controls in the transform tool and move it as needed. But mine's pretty much spot on, I think, so I'm just going to leave that as it is. So I'll click the green check mark to apply that transformation. It's not actually going to move because I was happy with that. And I'm going to close that sketch, and then we can move on to the next step. So move the camera and then click on the right of the view cube to move on to our next task. So now we need to draw an outline of this car. To do that, click the sketch button and then click on the right plane. And now we're going to draw around the car with the spline tool. Click on the spline tool and go to the front corner of the car. Now those very flat bits at the bottom that are just straight lines, we'll use the line tool for that separately. So we'll start at the bottom corner and we'll click and try to follow the curvature of this car body with the spline tool. And remember that it's always best to try and create a spline using as few construction points as possible, so that way the line isn't bumpy and difficult to work with later on. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is switch to the line tool. So when you've created your spline, you can press the escape key and then the escape key again to turn the spline tool off completely. Now switch to the line tool, and we're going to draw a line from the front of the car, the beginning construction point, down to where the wheel arch should begin. Press the escape key to cancel out the line tool, and then select the line tool again, and we're going to do the same thing from the back of the car to the wheel arch, and then press the escape key. Click on the line tool again, and then let's create a line for the base of the car between the wheel arches, and then press the escape key again. Okay, so now to finish off this shape, we just need to create the wheel arches. To do that, you're going to choose the 3-point arc tool. Click that, and then click on the 2 dots between the wheel arch. So click once on the first dot, click a second time on the other dot, and then just move the mouse cursor upward until you've got a wheel arch that roughly matches the one on the drawing. If it's not exact, don't worry. And then click to apply that. And then do the same thing on the rear wheel. Click, click again, and then move the mouse cursor up to draw your wheel arch, and then click to apply that arc. When you've done that, we can give this outline a name. We'll call it car side outline, and then click the green check mark to apply. Now with that completed, if for any reason you want to change the shape of the outline that you've just created, you simply go to the car side outline in the feature tree, double click it to open it back up, and then you can click on the construction points and you can move them around to change the shape. You can click on the lines to move the shape of the lines as well. But if you're generally happy with the shape, you can just leave it as it is. So I'll leave it like that, and I'll exit out of the sketch, and we'll move on to the next step. The next step is to turn this outline into a 3D model. So what we're going to do is just model half of the car, and then once we're finished with that half, we'll mirror it so that everything is symmetrical. To do that, hide the car side view reference image because we don't need that for now. And then, now we can just see the outline. Switch to the isometric view, which is the top left hand of the view cube. And then click on the extrude tool and click on the outline. When you put your mouse cursor over it, you can see it's highlighted in orange. Click once, and that will add the extrusion. Click on the front of the view cube to change the camera angle, and then click and drag the extrusion arrow and make the extrusion the same size as the car. So we're going to drag the extrusion right to the edge of the car reference image. Once you've done that, we're going to give this extrusion a name. We're going to call it car side extrude. And then click the green check mark. And now if you use the arrow keys to just rotate the camera slightly, you can see that we've got an extrusion that looks like the shape of our car. And it's just half. Like I said, we're going to mirror that later. So if you've rotated the camera, just make sure you've clicked on the front of the view cube to look back on the front plane. And now we're going to create a new plane by clicking on the plane tool. Click on the front plane, and we're going to offset this new plane. So we're going to need to switch to an isometric view. And there you can see we've got the front plane and the plane that we've just created. Now let's switch to the right view. And I'm going to click on this arrow and move it to the front of the car. And we're going to draw a new outline on this new plane. So when you've done that, give that plane a name. I'm going to call it car front plane. And then click the green check mark. Now we'll switch to the front view. And we're going to use the same technique to draw a sketch on that. So click on the sketch button and then click on that new plane. And we're going to use the spline tool again to draw around the side of the car, just half of it. So click on the spline tool. You might want to zoom in slightly and then click on the top of the roof right in the center point and use the spline tool to create the curvature of that car. And we're going to skip the wing mirror because that would be a separate part. So we're just going to draw around the side of the car body. Again, it doesn't matter if you're not being exact. And you can see that my extrusion doesn't reach the very bottom of the front of this car. That's fine. So I'm just going to keep drawing this and then go to the midpoint. And we can always change the size of this curve later on. But for now, we're going to cancel out of that by pressing the escape key and then the escape key a second time and switch to the line tool. Now go to that first construction point on that spline you've just created. You might want to zoom out a bit. Click, move the mouse cursor vertically upward, click again, move to the right, click again, then down, past the bottom of the car vertically, click again, to the left all the way to that midpoint line, click again, and then up to reach the final construction point of the spline and click again. So now we've effectively got this rectangle with a car-shaped chunk missing from it. And what we're going to do is use the extrude remove on this. But before we do that, let's just go in. So press the escape key to cancel out of the line tool. And if you want to make any changes to this spline, you can by just clicking like you have before on the construction points and making the curve more like the shape that you are looking for. So I'm just making a few small changes here. There we go. And you can see that my spline doesn't fit the car exactly. We're not going to be making a real 3D model from this or an engineering part or anything. So this is just building our skills. So if you don't match the shape of the car exactly, that's completely fine. But just get something that roughly matches. Once you've done that, we're going to give that a name. I'm going to call this car front outline and then click the green check mark. Now we can switch to an isometric view and we can extrude this outline that we've just created here. You can see when I hover the mouse cursor over it, it's highlighted in orange. This is what we're going to extrude. So click on the extrude tool, click on the new outline you've just drawn, and it will extrude forwards. What we're going to do is switch to the right view with the view cube, You might want to zoom out a bit so you can get hold of the arrow, and you go into extrude this backwards to the back of the car. And you can extend right past the back of the car. That's completely fine. It doesn't need to be exact. And what we're going to do now is, rather than add this as a solid extrusion, we're going to use the remove modifier. So in the extrude tools, you need to make sure that solid is selected, but also remove, because right now it's set to add. So under extrude 1, you'll see solid highlighted in blue and remove highlighted in blue. And when you've done that, we can give it a name. We'll call this car front extrude, and then click the green check mark. Now if I rotate the camera with the arrow keys, you can see that I've got a curved look to my extrusion at the side, rather than it looking like one rectangular brick. There we go. So all we need to do now is hide that car front view reference image, and we're just left with our 3D model. There we go, that looks like that. When you've done that, you can switch back to the right view and admire your handiwork, and then we'll move on to the next step. So now we've done that, all you need to remember is that we can use the extrude remove tool to basically carve away at a 3D object. So whereas you might watch some tutorials that have you making complex wireframe models and then using tools like the fill tool to create new surfaces and engage in complex surface modeling, we can create simple curved shapes by simply creating a 3D model and carving away at it, very much like that 3D model was a lump of clay. And when we use the extrude remove, we can create these complex curved surfaces and just use the extrude tool to cut away material from the 3D model. So with that being said, we're going to use the exact same technique, but this time we're going to do it on the top view. So if we just switch to the isometric view, so we can see the top of the view cube, and then click on the top plane on the view cube, you can see that the front and back and side of the car are curved, whereas my 3D model is still like a big rectangle. So I have material at the front and side and back of the car that I want to remove. So we're going to use the exact same technique as before. We're going to click on the sketch button and create a new sketch on the top plane. And now we're going to use the spline tool to draw around half of the car again. So click on the spline tool, go to the very back corner of your 3D model. You might want to zoom in a little bit. And I'm going to select the back of my actual extrusion, click once, and I'm going to start to create a number of construction points to create the outline of this car. So you can just do the same. And again, just like before, we're going to completely skip the wing mirror. And remember, you can move the mouse around with the center mouse button while you do this, if you need to move the camera. So we're just going to draw around the front of this car. And I'm going to join it up to the front of my extrusion rather than the front of the image. There we go, like that. Okay, so when you've done that, you can zoom back out. And if you move the mouse cursor, it'll want to keep going with that extrusion. Press the escape key once to cancel that, and the escape key again to come out of the spline tool altogether. Now we're going to use that same technique as before. Click on the line tool, go to the first point of your spline, click once, move the mouse cursor vertically up, and then move it to the right, down, again vertically, move along to that center point, and you can see it kind of snaps to that center point. You see the orange guideline appear. Click, and then join the front of the extrusion. Not the front of the image. You can see the way it wants to join onto a construction line here. I'm going to join it onto the line on the actual spline itself. That's really important. So click, and then you can zoom back out, and we've got that piece again. And now we're going to give this a name. So I'm going to call this car top outline. and then click the green check mark. And now we can switch to the isometric view, and you can see we've got this plane that we've created, this sketch. We're going to extrude that. So click on the extrude tool, click on that outline that you've just created, and make sure that you've got a check mark in the symmetric box in the extrude options. Now we can switch to the front view, and you can see that solid extrusion has appeared. It's going to be extending vertically and horizontally because we've got symmetric checked. We can click on the check mark and just drag that out beyond the top and bottom of the car. And then make sure you've got solid highlighted in blue and also remove. So we're using an extrude remove here. So solid is in blue, remove is in blue, and if that's okay and all of that excess material disappears, you can give that a name, and we're going to call it car top remove, and then click the green check mark. And there you go, you've got the side of the car done now. Okay, so now if we switch to an isometric view and hide the car top view, so the third reference image that we were using, we're just left with the 3D model of half of the car body that we've created. All right, so now we're going to add a few finer details. So we're going to create some windows. So to do that, we're going to click on the plane button, create a new plane, and make it an offset of the right plane. So select the right plane, and then you can switch to the front view and move this plane out to the side. And it can extend beyond the car body itself. That's completely fine. And when you've done that, we'll give that a name. We're going to call it window plane, and then click the green check mark. Now we're going to look at this new plane we've created from the right. So click on the right, the view cube, click on the sketch button, create a sketch on that new plane, and we're going to draw the windows. So let's show the car side view. So find it in the feature tree, and there we go. We're going to draw the windows. So we'll use the spline tool again and zoom in slightly. Now, this is really important. If you look at this black line that we've got running along the side of the car, we want to make sure that our windows, so that it doesn't affect the 3D model and the way it looks later on, we want to make sure that the windows that we create are above this line. It's really important. So we're not going to copy this window perfectly. So I'm going to start slightly above where the window in the reference image is. And then I'll start to draw my spline. So you can see it's above that black line. And then when you've done that, press the escape key and escape key again to cancel out the spline tool entirely. And then click on the line tool and start to finish off the window. Again, make sure that your window doesn't extend below that black line that we can see on the side of the car. Once you've done that first window, you can switch to the spline tool and you can do the second window. Again, be careful that you don't go beneath that black line where the windows are. So when you've drawn the spline, press escape twice and then switch to the line tool and finish your windows off. Like that. So we've got two windows there. And we're going to give this sketch a name. We're going to call it window sketch, and then click the green check mark. Now we're going to switch to an isometric view, and we're going to extrude these windows. So click on the extrude tool, click on the front window, create an extrusion, but this time, if you switch to the front of the view cube, we can extrude through the car and use the extrude remove technique. So solid is checked, remove is checked, so they're both highlighted in blue. And then we'll call this one driver window extrude, and click the green check mark. We'll switch back to an isometric view. There we've got our first window, and you'll see that the window sketch has now been hidden, so we'll reveal that again in the feature tree and use the extrude tool again and do the same for the passenger window. Click on it once to extrude it, switch to the front view and bring that through the car like that. And then remember, solid is highlighted in blue and you've selected the remove option, and we'll call this passenger window extrude and give that a name, and then hit the green check mark. And now if we switch to the isometric view, you can see that we've got two windows running through the car. Okay, and all we need to do now is hide the window sketch, so that disappears, and there we go, we've got a better view. We can also hide the car side view, and that's what we're left with, like that. Alright, so we're going to use this same technique for the windscreen. So we're going to click on the sketch button again, go to the car front plane to create a new sketch, and then switch to the front view with the view cube. Now we're going to show the car front view, and we're going to draw around this window. So we're going to zoom in, and again, it's very important that when we create the window, we don't go below this black line that you can see on the car hood or the car bonnet, whatever you call it. So select the spline tool, click on that center point line where the windscreen starts, and start to create your windscreen. And here I'll press escape, and I will switch to the line tool. I'll create that, and then join the bottom point to the top point, and then press escape to come out of the line tool. And if you're not happy with the shape of the windscreen, you see the way mine's kind of bent downwards, we can use the construction points to kind of fix the look of that windscreen if we're not happy with it, until you've got something that you're happy with. So there we go, that looks a bit better. I'm happy with that now. So I'm going to give this a name. I'm going to call it windscreen sketch, and then click the green check mark. And now we're going to use the same technique. Let's switch to an isometric view, and let's extrude this surface we've created. So click on the extrude tool, click on the windscreen that's floating in midair, and extrude it. And then we're going to switch to the right view. We're going to zoom out, and we're going to bring that extrusion right out the back of the car, so it looks like a huge pillar's crashed through the front of that car, which wouldn't be ideal in real life. And make sure solid is selected and remove is selected, same as before. And we're going to give this a name. We're going to call it windscreen extrude remove. There we go. And click the green check mark. So now when you use the arrow keys to zoom around, you can see we've got the windscreen there cut out. And what I'll do is I'll hide the car front view in the feature tree. So now you're just left with your car side. There you go, 3D model. We've got half the car. All right, so we're making good progress. We're almost done. So at that point, we're going to add a few more details to the front of the car, a headlight and a grille. So click on the front of the view cube, and we're going to move on. Okay, so to draw a headlight and a grille, click on the sketch button, and we're going to add a sketch to this front plane. So if I just switch to the isometric view, just so you're not confused, It's the car front plane that we're going to add these details to. So click on the car front plane to create a sketch. And then go back to the front view with the view cube. And now we can show the car front view. And you can see that the shape of the car that I've created doesn't quite match the outline. So I need to draw my headlights somewhere else and the grille somewhere else. So I'm just going to start doing this by sight and just making something up. And I'm going to keep it simple. So I'm going to click on the corner rectangle and I'm going to draw a headlight on the front of the car. I'll just put it here like that. And then I'll use the line tool to draw a grille. And I'll try and match the kind of grille shape that this car already has. There we go, like that. And I'll join that top and bottom point there. All right, there we go. So now I'm just going to give this sketch a name. I'm going to call it Grille Sketch and then click the green check mark. Now let's switch to the isometric view and you can see these two faces are floating in midair that I've created that I'm hovering the mouse cursor over. We're going to extrude those and we'll use the same technique, extrude remove. So click on the extrude tool and we'll start with the headlight. Click on the headlight and then click and drag the arrow in toward the car body until we have the shape of the headlight kind of etched into the front of the car. And remember, we're going to switch it to solid and remove. And now you can see that we've got this car headlight. As I move the cursor backwards and forwards, I've got a small section of that headlight cut out. And as I move the extrude tool further in towards the car, I get more of that car headlight revealed. So once you've done that, you can see the full shape of the headlight. We'll just give it a name. So we'll call this headlight extrude remove and then click the green check mark. And we'll use exactly the same technique for the front grille. So click on the extrude tool, click on the grille, and then we will switch to solid remove. And you can just reposition that. And you might want to switch to the front of the view cube there. And you can just see if that's cut into the front of the car, which it looks like it has. Okay, so if you're happy with that, all we need to do now is give that a name. So click the little pencil tool next to the green check mark, and we're going to call this Grille Extrude Remove. And then hit the green check mark. There we go. All right, so what we can do at this point is hide that grille sketch, switch to the front view and look at our handiwork. And you can see here that we've got these huge chunks missing from the front of the car. And you might think it looks a little bit daft at the minute. Don't worry about that. We're going to fix it later, okay? If you're really concerned with there being no base to this, all we need to do is go to the front view, show the grille sketch again, and then we can go in, if we double click it, and we can change the size of this, this sketch. So if I just zoom in here and click it on the front view, so I'll zoom in, and what I can do is I can just move these and make them smaller like that, and I can move this one up a little bit. Okay, and you can just change the shape of that. And so if I close out that sketch now, and then zoom back out, and I'll hide that sketch again, you can see that the grille shape looks a little bit different now. See the way the base is further forward. All right, so I'm happy with that. So you can always make changes to this later on by just going in and editing the sketch. Right, okay, so we've created the grille, we've created the headlight. So I'm going to go back to the isometric view and I'm going to hide that car front view, and I'll hide the car front plane as well because we've got a lot going on here. I'll hide the window plane. All right, so now we can just have a look. This is what we're left with so far. So we've got these big holes where the windows should be and the grille and the headlight. So I'll switch to an isometric view, and now we need to use the fill tool to actually create some actual windows and the glass on the headlight. So to do that, go to the search tools option in the top right hand of the screen and just type in fill and choose the fill tool from the list. It looks like a net, a fishing net. So if you click that, what it'll do is it'll give you this new options panel that appears, fill, new, and then we've got edges. So it's asking for us to select some edges that we want to turn into a face. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to select the edge of the driver's side window. So the first spline, make sure you get in the outside of the window, not the interior. So the next edge, and then I'll zoom out, and then I'll choose the bottom of the window. And there you see it's added it as a face there. And I'm going to give this a name. I'll call this driver window. Fill. And hit the green check mark. And then I'll use that same tool, so click the fill tool again, and I'll simply go around and I'll do the other window. 1, 2, 3, so that turns into a face. It starts to color the windows automatically. Don't worry about that. We'll change the colors ourselves towards the end. So we'll give this a name. We'll call it passenger window fill. Keep spelling window wrong. And then hit the green check mark. And then we'll switch to the front view. We'll zoom in and we will use this tool again on the grille and the headlight. So select the fill tool. I'll select the edges of that headlight like that. And I'll call this one headlight fill. And check the fill tool again, and well, actually we can't do this one because it's only half. It's gotten rid of that joining line right in the middle. So we'll actually leave this till later. So I'm going to cancel out of that one. We're not going to do that one. So if I switch to an isometric view, you can see we've got a solid cap now over the headlight and the two windows. All right, so we've still got the windscreen and the rear window and that grille to do. But before we do that, we're going to mirror this and make the car one piece, and then we'll add the windows. So mirroring this is really simple. Go to the mirror tool, and then it will say entities to mirror. Make sure part mirror is selected. So if you look at the list, you've got part, feature, and face mirror. You need to make sure that you've got part mirror selected. And then click on the car body, either in the window, the 3D model itself, or click on part 1 in the part list. And you'll see there in entities to mirror, we've got part 1. Click on the red mirror plane box, and then choose the right plane. And we get a mirrored half of the car. So now when we just kind of move the mouse cursor, we'll just rotate the camera a bit, you can see we've got this car that we've created. There's the full body there. So we'll give this mirror a name. We'll call it car body mirror, and then hit the green check mark. All right, then I'll switch back to an isometric view. And now we will use the fill tool again to finish off this car body. So select the fill tool. I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to select the edges of the windscreen. So 1, 2, 3. And it generates the windscreen there. So I'll give that a name. I'll call it windscreen fill. Click the green check mark. And then I'll go around to the back of the car, and I'll do the same thing for the rear window. So select the fill tool. 1, 2, 3. Generates the rear windshield. So give that a name. I'll call it rear window fill, and hit the green check mark. And then finally, we're going to go to the front, and now we can do that grille. So click on the fill tool, and you need to be careful with this so you can zoom in so you can make sure you select all of these edges, otherwise the face won't generate. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's actually 8 edges there that I've needed to select. Yours might be slightly different, and I'm going to give that a name. So I'll call that grill fill. And then I'll hit the green check mark to apply that. Okay, so now we've got the grill done, but you can see on the mirror side, those fills haven't generated. So we're going to do those manually as well. So go to the fill tool and we're going to do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then give it a name. Mirror headlight fill. And do the last 2 windows. Choose the fill. 1, 2, 3. Driver, mirror, fill. And then the passenger window. Choose the fill tool. 1, 2, 3. I'll call that passenger, mirror, fill. And then hit the green check mark. And there we go. So if I just go back to the isometric view, that's our car body. So all I'm going to do now is edit the colors. I'm going to right click on the car body and we go edit appearance for part 1. And I'm going to choose a nice bright red for the body and click the green check mark. And then I'll click on the headlights. But this time I'll go add appearance to face and I'll make that yellow. And I'll click on the other headlight and do that so they're the same color. And you can see they're both selected, face of headlight fill and face of mirror headlight fill. So they're both in the list. Click on the green check mark and then we'll go around and we'll do the windows. So I'll right click on the windshield, add appearance to face, and I'll choose like a blue color and then I'll click on the other windows. There we go, and they all start changing as I move around. And then I'll rotate the camera and I'll do the other windows. There we go, so I've got 5 of them and they're all listed in the appearance window. So when you've done that, hit the green check mark, switch to the isometric view, and there you go. So you've got the car body, it's all done. If you want to use the same kind of technique for the grille, you can add lights and things and details to the back of the car or the side. I'm not going to do that for the sake of speed and length of this video. So all we need to do now is add some wheels and then we are done. So to add the wheels is quite a simple task. First, we're going to click on the plane tool to create a new plane. And we're going to create that plane using the existing right plane. We're going to switch to the front of the view cube and move that plane outwards until it's almost at the very edge of the car. This is going to be the center point of our tire. And we're going to give that a name. We'll call it wheel plane. And then click the green check mark. So now if we just switch to the isometric view, you can see that we've got the right plane and this new wheel plane that we've just created. So we're going to create a sketch on that plane. So click on the sketch button, select the wheel plane, and then click on the right of the view cube and we're going to draw a wheel. To do that, use the center point circle, go to the center of your wheel arch, and then click once and move the mouse cursor outwards and draw a wheel. And if it's not dead center, don't worry. If you're happy with it, click to apply it, and if you don't like it, delete it and try again. So that's the outline of the wheel. So let's start to add some details. Click again on the center point of that wheel, move the mouse cursor outward, and we're going to make this almost as big as the previous one. This is going to be the kind of rim of the tire. Click that to apply that. Go to the center point again, draw the inner part of the tire, and click. And then we're going to zoom in, click to draw a small circle in the center of that wheel. That's where the axle would attach. And then go to the center point of that wheel. So it's highlighted in orange. Move the mouse cursor upward and you'll see this orange guiding line. Click and draw another circle, a bit smaller than the one in the middle. and we're going to use the circular pattern tool to create some copies of this circle we've just made and place them an equal distance apart around the central part of this wheel. So to do that, go to the circular pattern tool, and that's in the same slot where you'll usually find the transform tool. So select circular pattern, click on the circle you just created, and you'll see this huge construction line appear. If we zoom out, you'll see that we've got this construction line. That is the circular pattern, and there are two copies of that circle on it. So what we're going to do is make this circular pattern a little bit smaller and tighter and fit it around the center of our wheel. So to do that, you're going to need to click on that central square that's part of the circular pattern tool. Click it, and you can drag it and move it inwards to the very center of the wheel, and it'll just snap into place. And as we do that, you can see that it's also brought in those three copies of the circle. So now I'm going to zoom in, and I've got the first circle I drew, and I've got two copies, which totals 3. And there we've got this, at the side we've got this 3x. If I double click that, if I change that number to 3 and press enter, it's going to give me my original and 5 extra copies amounting to 6. And if I want to move this arrow, I can reduce the distance between them, but I'll leave it at 300 degrees, the default, so that they're all equally spaced. And then that's the sketch complete. So I'm going to give that a name. I'm just going to call it wheel sketch, and then click the green check mark. All right, so all we need to do now is if we switch to the isometric view, we just want to extrude the different parts of this tire that we've created. So click on the extrude tool, and then we're going to choose the outer rim of the tire. Click that, but you can see it's come out quite far. I don't want it to be that far, so we'll fix that in a minute. Select the next layer of the wheel. All right, so this is going to be our tire, and then make sure you've checked symmetric in the extrude options and switch to the front view. And then we're going to use that little arrow to bring that tire in to make it something more reasonably sized. When you're happy with that, give that a name. So I'm going to call it tire extrude, and then click the green check mark. And then we're just going to extrude the other parts of that wheel, and you can see the sketch has disappeared. So let's show the wheel sketch again, because we're going to need that. I'm going to zoom in and click on the extrude tool and choose the inner part of the wheel, and we'll do the same thing. We will bring that extrude inwards, but we'll make it go in a little bit more than the tire itself. There we go. And we'll give that a name. So I'm going to call it inner wheel. Click the green check mark. Rotate the camera again so you can see those kind of like central circles, and we'll extrude those. So click on the extrude tool and then go around one by one and extrude those. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. And then we can move that arrow and bring those in a little bit further than the inner wheel. There we go. And I'm just going to call these, I'll just call them wheel dots, nice and simple, and then click the green check mark. All right, so what I'll do now is I will hide the wheel sketch, because that's kind of getting in the way and making things confusing at this point. Get rid of that. And now I'm going to add a fillet to the very edge of the tire. So I'll click to add a fillet. It's set to 0.1 right now. If I change that to 0.2, it will make the tire more rounded, but I like 0.1, so I'll leave it at that. And then I'll rotate the camera around, and I'll do the other side of the tire like that. All right, and I will call that fillet tire, and click the green check mark. So all we've got to do now is give the wheel some color. So I'm going to right click on the wheel and go to add appearance to face. I'll choose the black color, and I'll select all of the parts of the wheel that I want to make black, like that. Okay, and when you're happy with that, you can click the green check mark, and then we'll do the same thing for the inner wheel. Right click, add appearance to face. I'll choose a gray color, and then I'll click on all of the central dots, and I'll change the color for all of those. And you want to get those little sides as well, so click on those. There we go. All right, so they're all grey, and then click the green check mark. All right, so now we've got our wheel. All right, so if I switch to the isometric view, we've got one wheel, and now we need another, and that's really simple. All we're going to do is click on the right of the view cube, and you can see that part 1 is the body of the car, and part 2 is the wheel. So I'm going to right click in the parts list on part 2 and select copy here. And now we've got part 3, and that's the copied wheel. And we're going to use these transform options. I'm going to drag that horizontal arrow and move part 3, this copied wheel, into place in the rear wheel arch. So the horizontal arrow moves it left and right, the vertical arrow moves it up and down, and the square moves it diagonally. So I'm happy with that. Click the green check mark. I'll switch to the isometric view, and all I want to do now is mirror these wheels. So click on the mirror tool, select part 2, which is the front wheel, part 3, which is the rear wheel, and then click on the red box for the mirror plane, and then choose the mirror plane, which is going to be the right plane. So if I click that, if I just spin the camera around, you can see I've got copies of those wheels on the other side. There we go. So I'm just going to give that a name. I'm going to call that mirror wheels, and then click the green check mark. All right, and there we go. That's the car finished. So what I can do now is I can go and hide all of those planes that I don't want to see anymore. So the top plane, front right, and the wheel plane. So that's in the feature list. So get rid of that. Switch to isometric view, and there we go. That's the car. So all we've done really is taken a block, and we've used the extrude remove tool to give it some curved sides by just basically carving away and sculpting those more complex curves. And this will save you a lot of time if you're struggling with complex surface modeling using wireframe models. It's a nice simple technique. And there you go. So I hope you found that video useful, and you can use this skill in other projects that you create. So good luck with your Onshape modeling.